Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us for another Employer Spotlight hosted by the Return Volunteer Services team within the Office of Third Goal and Return Volunteer Services. My name is Farron Crawford. I'm a program specialist with the RVS team, Return Volunteer Services. And this Employer Spotlight today is being, Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us for another Employer Spotlight hosted by the Return Volunteer Services team. We are featuring State Department's Consular Fellows Program. And we have an amazing lineup of panelists here today that are here to answer all of your questions regarding the Consular Fellows Program within this hour. So if you have any questions, get ready to shoot those questions to us in that live chat. So just a quick tidbits about this webinar format. It's an hour. So if you have any questions, go ahead and start typing them in now or as they come to you. Also, because it's only a short duration of time, those questions that you're really interested in knowing, if you see that somebody's asked that question, go ahead and hit the like button. It will shoot that question all the way up in the queue so our panelists can answer that question sooner. Next, at any time, if you have any trouble during this webinar with the sound or the visual, go ahead and hit the refresh browser or just exit out of the Hangout and reload it. Don't worry if you miss anything, because there's always an opportunity to join us again and watch it from our YouTube channel at RPCV Careers. Lastly, the Return Volunteer Services team is here and happy to help you with career-related services, everything from one-on-one counseling to mock interviews, resume help, these live webinars, our RPCV career fairs and career conferences and job fairs, documentation for and proof of your service, help with leveraging your NCE, and much, much more. So if you want to utilize those free services that are available to you as an RPCV, go ahead and write to us at RPCV Career Center at peacecorps.gov or RVS at peacecorps.gov, or you can just log into your RPCV portal. One more thing just to mention, the Third Goal team is really interested in knowing about those neat activities that you are creating in your communities and sharing your service from abroad and bringing it back home. So if you're interested in learning more about how you can get involved and get those Third Goal kits, go ahead and write to them at thirdgoal@peacecorps.gov. So now that that's over with, let's go ahead and jump right on into it, this webinar, and meet our wonderful panelists for the State Department's Consular Fellows Program. So joining us virtually, we have Jessica Morgan, who is a Consular Fellow. She's currently with us, joining us from the U.S. Embassy, Port of Spain in Trinidad and Tobago. She comes with us with more than 12 years of experience, where she worked as a regional sales manager in the power supply and electronics industry. And so we're really happy to have her today, and she's going to talk about her experience and how she got on board in the program. And again, if you're just joining us, we see that more viewers are coming in. Go ahead and start submitting your questions. We also have Sharon Keld, who is having a little technical difficulties, but she'll be joining us here shortly. She's also a fellow, and if you joined us for our last webinar, she was a fellow in training, and she is now currently doing her first tour in Dubai. And so we look forward to hearing from Sharon when she's able to hop on. So in-house with us today, we have Judy Torres. Thank you for being here, Judy. Judy is an RPCV. She served in
Dominican Republic, 2007 and 9.
Awesome. And she also worked here as a diversity and outreach recruiter here at headquarters at Peace Corps. She's currently working with at State Department, as well as Sarah Klein. And Sarah Klein joins us. She has a wealth of experience, over 10 years, I believe, with State Department. Has been to over 62 countries with State Department, and lived recently in Armenia, Israel,
and Dubai, and not Armenia though.
Not Armenia. Okay.
Not yet.
So I do apologize for that. But as you can tell, these ladies have a wealth of knowledge and experience that they're going to share with you all. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. I'm going to shoot it to you, Sarah. Can you just go ahead and introduce yourself and then tell us about State Department, and let's get into it.
Sure. So I'm Sarah. I've been with State Department for about 10 years. I've served in Iceland, Dubai, Afghanistan. I traveled with both Secretary Clinton and Kerry on their advanced team, where you travel ahead of them to the various countries I go. Then I was in Israel, and now I'm back here as a recruiter. We're overseas. We are the face of the U.S. You know, we work with, you work as diplomats with other embassies, and you work with the local people there. So it's a great, great experience to actually not only go overseas and visit these countries, but to work with the government and like the locals. It's an amazing job, and I've done it for 10 years at this point. You know, I did no idea what I wanted to do after college, and I said, I'll do this for 1 or 2 years, and now it's been 10 years. So it is an amazing program, and the Consular Fellowship Program is an amazing way to get in there and try it out. You know, see if this is the job for you before you sign up for the long haul. But I want to go into
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hi everyone, I'm Judy Torres. As mentioned, I was an RPCV, or I am an RPCV. Served back in 2007 and 2009, like I said. And I'm actually brand new to State Department. I've only been there for about 6 months. And it was very much, fortunately, due to my NCE. So I am civil service, I'm not foreign service. So that NCE really does help out. So basically what happened with me is when I finished my service, I went straight to grad school. So I got my 1 year of NCE that was deferred. So I was able to go ahead and take advantage of it immediately when I graduated from grad school. And then afterwards, I was able to go ahead and get a recruitment job out in the Chicago office, worked there for 2 years, got promoted up to headquarters, and then spent my 5 years here. And then you get that NCE again for 3 years if you work here 3 years consecutively. And so I made some really good connections during that time frame that I was working here. And it landed me my job over at the State Department. So it's another great way to go ahead and see how you can navigate that NCE status, get the benefit of the grad school too, because I was a Corridor Fellow as well. So a lot of great stuff through Ivy Sports Service.
Great.
Yep.
So before we come back, because I'm interested in knowing more about the application process and what they're looking for with RPCVs, I want to ask Jessica, can you talk a little bit more about yourself and your experience and how you landed a position as a consular fellow?
Sure. As Farron said, I'm a consular fellow currently serving.
Because I'm interested in knowing more about the application process and what they're looking for with
My first
RPCVs.
post in Puerto Rico.
Talk a little bit more about.
I joined the State Department in February of 2016, so a little over a year now. I joined the Consular Fellows Program through the testing process. I had actually tested to be a Foreign Service Officer, a generalist, and I was offered a position in the Consular Fellows Pilot Program, and I accepted it, and it's been a great opportunity to see the inside of an embassy and to work alongside Foreign Service generalists and specialists and locally employed staff. For the officer, a generalist, and I was offered a position in the Consular Fellows Pilot Program, and I accepted it, and it's been a great opportunity to see inside of an embassy and to work alongside Foreign
Wonderful. Okay, so thank you, Jessica. All right, so
I've seen some of the questions.
yeah, I feel like there's so many questions already.
The first one I saw is about the hiring freeze, which is a great question. We've just come off the hiring freeze. We're still in a sort of hiring freeze, but the process to get in general is going to take a little bit. So still apply for the program, and the Consular Fellowship Program itself, we are still hiring because it is a separate category that we are actually, these are needs that we have around our different consulates. So that's that one.
Great. All right, can you talk a little bit about what is the actual application process?
Yeah, so first and foremost, we really encourage you guys to go ahead and visit careers.state.gov. That's going to be kind of the main hub where all the information is going to be located. I went ahead and there's basically 8 steps when it comes down to going through the process itself. And the first thing we always want you to think about is the eligibility. So very much the very first step is one, you have to be a U.S. citizen. You have to be at least 20 years old by the time that you apply, but you have to be at least 21 by the time that you would be in actual service. We want you to go ahead and be able to get top secret clearance. So just knowing that that's going to be something you're going to have to go through. So definitely go ahead and kind of think about where you stand eligibility wise. If all of those things work, we encourage you to go ahead and apply. And again, a lot of this information is going to be on the careers.state.gov website, where you get to go ahead and submit your application. A lot of that is going to be combined with the actual exam, so the Consular Fellow program test. And so you actually have to go to a Pearson View Center to actually physically take the test. You can do that Monday through Friday, basically 9 to 5 to go ahead and schedule it. If you want to go ahead and take the exam, we encourage you to go ahead and do that. There's no fee associated if you actually take it. But if you go ahead and you register but you don't make it, there'll be a fee of $45. So just go ahead and get there, take the exam. Next, you will have to take a language test because again, we're going to be looking at the critical languages. So there's 5 main ones. So we look at Arabic, Spanish, Chinese, Mandarin, Portuguese, Russian. Taxi map for here. So those are the 5 languages that we're really looking for, all the critical languages. So once we go ahead and we verify that you have proficiencies in those particular languages, so go ahead and move you forward, in which you'll get evaluated. And so the evaluation is going to be a combination of your narratives that you did, kind of with your resume, your narratives, and how you did in the actual exam. And then after that, you're going to go ahead and do an oral assessment. So you're going to go ahead and come into DC. Unfortunately, it's something we don't pay for. You actually have to get here on your own. But it will be an opportunity for you to have that face-to-face, go through the oral assessment, and you'll know whether or not you pass, fail. And then we'll go into the clearances, so like medical and legal. And then those are kind of the major steps through it all. Again, there's more detail on the actual website. So if you wanted to go ahead and check it out, that's going to be the best place to go.
So you mentioned language proficiency. Like, what level do you have to test out in order to be successful in this program, or to even be considered?
So you're gonna have proficiency. So we say proficiency in a way that once they test for it, like it can't be something that you have casual or they took it in high school, or you actually have to be able to speak it because you're gonna be on the ground actually interviewing candidates.
Okay.
People who want to come to the U.S. or sometimes even are American citizens who do not speak English. So it is something that should be proficient, and that's why we have the test.
Okay.
Because that's the best way to see if you're actually proficient enough to take it. But it shouldn't be, casual or, I took it in high school. It has to be like proficiency.
And I do have one more question. Does NCE help you in any way as a consular fellow to get in?
Not necessarily in this particular case, but it will be more helpful if you are interested in being civil service. And so as I mentioned, I am civil service, so it really did help me bypass the USA jobs. I think many of us have gone through the experience of USA jobs, and we know it could be a little cumbersome. So a lot of it is going to be the opportunity to make the connection. So I encourage you all, if you have your NCE status, go to the RPCD career fairs, because I think that's one of the best benefits in actually meeting the recruiters and having that FaceTime to go ahead and say, hey, here's my resume, or hey, this is who I am, this is what I'm trying to get into, and kind of building those connections, because that's basically what really helped me with that. So NCE, not necessarily for this particular case, but definitely when it comes down to civil service programs. And the experience. I was going to say, so the experience that you get as an RPCD or as an actual PCD will help get you into the actual foreign service, because I think a lot of the times we talk about the 12 dimensions. So I guess you were going to.
Well, no, I was going to say that it seems like a lot of questions about, is this, like a jumping platform for the State Department? This is a 5-year limited assignment.
Yeah.
So after those 5 years, it's useful if you want to become a generalist or a specialist or anything in the State Department, you still have to go back through the normal way application process. So you still have to take the Foreign Service officer's test. You still have to apply to be a specialist and do all the testing that way as well. But it is it adds to your experience. So it adds to when you're applying, when you are actually, applying to be like a Foreign Service generalist or specialist or civil servant. You have not only language, but you also have been a consular fellow.
Yeah,
so it helps in that way. And it also, like I said, you can see if you want to do this, because this is a lifestyle. It's not just a job, it's a lifestyle. So it's, you have 5 years figuring out if this is what it's actually you want to do.
So I see a question here. It says, I'm hoping to know what kind of hiring will look like for consular fellows, since state still has a hiring freeze in place.
So that's what I was talking about earlier, where it's going to happen. So still apply. We're still hiring. This is one of the programs that we are actually filling. And we're still right now going through a process of figuring out what we're going to look like, what our budget's going to look like, but still apply for this process anyway, because it takes a while. And we are still hiring onto this program. I believe that's the last that we had. And we are, because it's a special, this is actually like high needs for us right now.
And I would just
transfer from, go ahead, Jessica.
Yeah.
I would jump in and say, it takes about 6 months from start to finish of the testing process. And then after that, several months to get clearances. So just to jump on, it does take a long time to get set up and accepted into the Consular Fellows program. So you should apply now in the plans that, it might take a year to be fully ready and accepted into the Consular Fellows. So just to jump on, it does take a long time to get set up and accepted.
Okay. Great. You'll have to excuse us. We're having playback issues. So if you can hear us, please bear with us, online viewers. We appreciate it. Okay. So moving on to our next questions. Is it pretty easy to transfer into another role with Department of State?
So it is and it isn't, in the sense of like, it is like, you will know, like, again, serving in these places, you will know what you want to do. So if you serve this for 5 years, you're going to say, yes, I want to be a generalist because I want to be a consular officer. Or no, I want to be a generalist, but I really like the political section instead. Or I want to be a specialist, or I want to be, you'll find out what you want to be. So it's a good way to figure that out. However, the easy transition you still have to go through, it's still restarting after those 5 years to go through the entire process.
Okay.
Whether you want to be a generalist or a specialist or actually a civil servant.
Mm-hmm. But a lot of the times when people are going through the actual Consular Fellows program, they use that time to go ahead and get ready and prep for the actual exam.
Okay.
So there's a lot of people, and number-wise, you don't actually have a lot of numbers just yet since it's a newer program. But it's one of those things that we have noticed kind of a tendency to some degree of people being able to test into actual foreign service positions and transition into it. Because I think the Consular Fellows is a good opportunity to like wet your toes and see whether it is the lifestyle you want to go ahead and go into. So I think in that light, it helps you build that experience, and so it'll be easier because you already are working side by side with junior officers.
Exactly, and so
you
you've
know
just
how
gone
to
through the
get
process.
into it. Exactly.
And specialists and everybody who's gone through the process of actually being hired into the State Department as a career. So it's great in that aspect.
Yeah, and you're making the connections and working
Absolutely.
side by side with people, so you'll have a better understanding how the whole system works, and if you're liking what the people do, like you get that personal connection. So I think on that note, it helps. But you still gotta go through the process.
Is there an educational requirement as well? Because I know I've seen some questions in regards to people finishing their MBAs, MPHs. Like, does that matter in regards to being a consular fellow?
Not necessarily.
No. It's more than anything right now, it's for the language.
Yeah.
Okay.
So more than anything, it's the proficiency in the language, and we do the test. It's just like our generalists, the generals in the foreign service. All the requirements are to be 21 years old and an American citizen.
High school degree.
High school degree, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then you take the test,
right?
And that helps like kind of figure out where you would go, and then you go through the rest of the process. So the education, majority of people do have like degrees and everything like that, but it's not a requirement.
Mm-hmm.
This is specific language
Great.
requirement.
So I'm curious to know, what type of skills do RPCVs have, or that you're, aside from language, that we may have that may be beneficial to them in the field when they're in the program, or even attempting to apply for the program?
Yeah, no, I think a lot of it, when it comes down to, if people are familiar with the 12 dimensions, and if not, Google it or go into the careers.state.gov website. In reality, I think a big part of it why there's such a nice overlay is because RPCVs have the experience of working overseas already. We've already gone through the motions of getting that intercultural competence, really being able to be culturally adaptable. I think a lot of it is going to be just being able to work with diversity, and kind of getting that frontline experience is really helpful. Obviously, the language obviously helps, especially because this program focuses in on that. But I think just the fact that you have those like cultural ties and you're able to make that connection, I think that's what's really helpful. And again, I'm not foreign service, so I can't fully say, but from the times that I talk to a lot of people within the service, it seems like there's a lot of overlap, and there's a lot of things that you are able to learn through like analyzing and writing and reading, all that kind of stuff. But when it comes down to like cultural adaptability or composure, like those are the types of things that you learn through experience and not necessarily like what you do in school. So
yeah, and Peace Corps is, we're all serving overseas, and it's one of those things, as being a foreign service officer, we have it a little easier. So you guys actually have already, been in countries, you've had the culture experience without kind of the nice little blanket we get when we go out, in the sense of, we have good housing, you go out and you automatically have an embassy group, you're working in an embassy. So it is, I mean, if you've guys done Peace Corps and been successful in that, the likelihood of you coming into the State Department being successful is like very high.
Okay.
To be quite honest.
So this is a question that I got before this webinar even started taking place. I got a lot of questions about age limit, and people were concerned that maybe they were too old to even apply. Is there an age restriction to be a consular fellow?
Not with this particular program.
Yes.
That's one of the things that we did. I tried to look into a little bit because I think that's something that does come up. And with this program, to what I've seen printed, no, there is no age cap. But if you are thinking about becoming a foreign service officer or specialist, there is an age condition. So it would have to be under 60, or 60 would be the year that they would have to retire. Again, I'm like 90% sure that's accurate, but again, I'm gonna go ahead and revert back to the careers.state.gov website just because again, they have the most information on there.
Yep, and careers.state.gov is the website, I think, where Louise was asking about. That's where you go to fill out the application and everything like that. So careers.state.gov is what you need to remember and what you need to go to.
We repeated it so often.
Yeah. So the difference between, I think the question about the FSOT, the Foreign Services Officer test versus the Consular Fellows test. So it's basically testing for the same knowledge. It's just the CF, what do we call it? CFPT? The test is it's going to be a condensed version of that, because what we're more looking at, I mean, we still want to make sure you have the general knowledge that we need, but what we're more looking at is the language, is the fact that you have proficiency in those languages that we need.
There's another question, and it seems like it's coming from Christine. Is there a way to know what the language test is in advance so we prepare appropriately?
That I'm aware of, and I think that's part of the whole testing method, is we want you to kind of like be on your toes, and that's kind of how we know how proficient you are. Are you able to take on whatever question they kind of jump out at you with? And I don't know, do you have, maybe Jessica might have more information on that?
Jessica, are you online?
I feel like she might be a little bit more knowledgeable since she's in for
Unfortunately, another tech difficulty, so Jessica will hopefully pop back on and answer that question for us.
So to be quite honest, I think it's much like once we're in the foreign service, we are, before I went to Dubai, I had Arabic. So it's the same concept as when they test us, they're testing for your proficiency, how you can talk, in everyday situations, but also if you were talking to a foreign minister or a foreign diplomat. So, making sure you have the skills to be able to adapt to any environment that you're in, to be able to speak to the person on the street versus when you're in the government house talking to someone like that.
Thank you. So I noticed that Sharon just jumped in on the chat. Unfortunately, Sharon's not able to participate virtually as she's having technical difficulties, but she is a consular fellow in Dubai, and so she is able to answer any of your questions and share some of her experience. So she'll probably be chatting in that box. So those questions that you might have, she'll be sending you a response. So we do apologize for that, and we thank you for your patience. So I have a question here about medical clearances. What is that like? Is it as stringent as the Peace Corps? Are you familiar with?
I'm not actually sure. Well, we give out different, meaning we have different classifications of medical clearance, where, if you have, and I'm not entirely sure what the different levels are, but for example, I can have a medical clearance that's lower, so I can only go to places that, could accommodate whatever my medical need is. So that's what it's based on. So it is like when I went through it, it's more you're just testing to see if you have any conditions that we would not be able to treat overseas, and you wouldn't be, basically you want to make sure you're gonna be healthy wherever you go to. But we also have different. That's a hard question because we have different levels.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's probably going to be case by case, and I mean, I'm unfortunately I'm not this familiar with the medical side here. But again, I think in general, we want to make sure that the safety security of, all the people is there. So it'll probably be similar to what Peace Corps is in regards to, we don't want to put people in places where the healthcare that they need wouldn't be available to them. Or if like a nearby country wasn't available to them, like obviously we want to make sure that they're safe and secure
Yeah.
and healthy.
And
So
the different levels would allow you to go to certain places versus other places.
Mhm.
Okay.
So, and lots of our actual medical clearance is also based on your dependent. So if your children have
Right.
also a medical condition that needs to be, it kind of goes in hand with your medical clearance.
Mhm.
If you're bringing them overseas with you, just to clarify.
Okay.
Yeah.
So to clarify and go back to the actual application process, it is a rolling application, correct?
Mhm.
So from start to finish, how long is that process? Like, what are you looking at?
I think it depends.
I think it depends.
And a lot of it's going to be dependent if or not you pass the exam.
Mhm.
And I think that's what it comes down to. I think for the most part, you're able to take the exam once a year, kind of the same as a foreign service exam. And it's one of those things that you could actually be applying to both if you wanted to apply both for the fellows program and the actual foreign service officer test. You could do them kind of on parallel, but I would say that if everything goes well,
And it's
like a year.
expedited
two.
in the sense that they offer tests regularly, whereas for example, the foreign service
Right.
officers I think is offered like twice a year.
3 times, yeah.
So it's the same. The test can be a little smaller, but you still have to go through those steps. So and then you have to go through the clearance and the medical process, and sometimes the clearance process takes a while. For our foreign service officers, we've always, and our specialists, we've said anywhere between 6 months to 14 months. And I think it's like, I would say 6 to 10 months, depending for the fellows, just because you have that test. If you're talking about from testing to the very end, since that test is offered more frequently. But it is the biggest portion of it's going to be like the medical clearance and security clearance.
Okay, and you get top security clearance?
Yes.
Yes, you have to be able to get top security clearance.
Okay.
Mhm.
So going back, I see that we have a lot of language questions. Do you need to be fluent in one of the 5 languages, or is it okay if you speak another language that's not necessarily the 5?
This program is specific to those 5 languages we need
Okay.
because it's separate from what we normally do. It's a special program
Yeah.
because of the fact that in these countries where they speak these languages, we have deficiencies in consular officers. So trying to get more people out there.
Yeah, they're just high need
Okay.
languages.
Perfect. So many questions coming in. Please keep asking them. Let's see. I do see, is it possible to be evaluated on 2 languages?
I think you're going to pick your language from the beginning.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and unfortunately, I don't know the answer to that one.
But you can send that question to I think we put the CFP email address.
Yes. So we will put that into the chat box. And again, if you have any questions about who to contact, go ahead and email us at rvs@peacecorps.gov, and we can give you those email addresses.
Because
and
I'm not
contact
sure
information.
about the 2 languages. I'm almost positive very, very, very beginning you have to pick.
Okay.
But, that might be changing because the program's kind of adapting to our needs.
Okay. So I have a question here, and it says, what countries will the Spanish-speaking fellows be serving in over the next 5 years, other than Mexico and the Dominican Republic?
I think of where else we have. That's a very good question. Right now, I'm not entirely sure where else. There are several other places that I can't off the top of my head think of where else it is. And it's also, we adapt as well to where we have, or we have the needs for those language speakers.
Mhm.
So it changes. You could say, it's Mexico one day, and then the next day it could be 3 different countries. Or not next day, maybe next month.
So the actual interview process, can you speak a little bit more about what it's like in the Consular Fellows Program? And is it similar to the FSOT with personal narrative questions? I know you talked about that a little bit more, a little bit earlier, but.
So it's similar in a sense. You take the test first, it's a general knowledge test, and then you do the narratives. And then if you're invited, you test for languages, and after that, if you're invited for the oral assessment, again, it's like an interview, but then it's also, giving you scenarios. So it's just kind of asking about scenarios, putting you into scenarios, and you talk how you would react in that scenario.
Is there anything in particular that they're looking for? Is it more like adaptability or?
Adaptability is huge. That is a very good skill to have. Adaptability, I would say, confidence in the sense of you're looking for someone who can represent us overseas. You want someone who has a confidence to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a good, you want to make sure that you come across well and are confident.
Right.
Not egotistical, confident.
Yeah. So what is challenging or stressful? I know this is probably for Sharon, and Sharon, I know you're typing in on it, but like from your experience.
For serving overseas, sure.
Yeah.
I think serving overseas, the most stressful part of it is going to be, you're away from home. So and while that's stressful, you adapt. Like you end up, your home becomes the community that you go to overseas, these embassies. So it's stressful in the sense that, you're being popped into another, but all of you all are Peace Corps, so you kind of know how that goes. I would say that is the most stressful is, you're away from home, and if you're away from family. And then depending on where you are, which country you're in, it might be where environmentally it's stressful, whether it's actual danger or if it's, monsoon season all the time. Or when I was in Iceland, the biggest thing that you had to adapt to was the lack of sunlight, and then the 24 hours of sunlight, and then the 24 hours of darkness. So it's removing yourself like you guys, do in Peace Corps from your home and going somewhere else and having to do your job in another country. Mm-hmm. So I think it's stressful, but it's fun, I think, at the same time.
So this is a program that if you weren't necessarily accepted the first time around, like just keep applying sort of deal. Really?
Yeah, so you're able to apply, and again, you're only able to take the exam once a year, but again, you're able to take it kind of at any point of the year now versus the foreign service exam where it's 3 times a year. So for the most part, if you are interested in it, keep doing it. I think it's the same as we would say for a foreign service officer. There's a high probability that people don't make it necessarily the first time, and you shouldn't get discouraged. You should just keep trying, and eventually it will happen. And I think people just have to stay kind of like motivated and engaged, and just like, okay, so now kind of where deficiencies are, you're able to go ahead and beef up where maybe you didn't do that great with geography or something. You need to go back and study a little bit and get yourself ready for it. So I would say if people are interested in really doing this, like, just keep doing it until maybe you're not, and that's okay too. So, okay. But yeah, just keep trying.
So if you have dual citizenship, can you apply to be a consular fellow?
I think so. In general, that's going to be a question that you should probably look back.
I was going to say, as long as one of those citizenships is U.S. citizenship.
Coming back to us, Jessica. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Sorry.
So
That's, I think, something maybe, I'm not entirely sure because it also depends on the country sometimes. Mm-hmm. And with the languages and the countries, I'm not sure if you had a dual from the place that you were going to serve. If you have dual citizen from there, it normally doesn't happen. But in general, we do have some dual citizens.
Hi, Jessica. Thanks for coming back. So we've been filtering through a lot of questions, and if you don't mind just going into a little bit more detail about like your day-to-day operations and things of that nature, and what's your favorite part of the job?
Yes, I would be happy to. So right now I'm working in non-immigrant visas. So I interview foreign nationals that want to travel to the United States for tourism and for business. Last week, I was actually working in American Citizen Services. So last week I was helping U.S. citizens living in Trinidad and Tobago renew their passports, get help if they're arrested, if they're destitute, if they're sick. I was working on those types of cases. Whereas this week, now that I've transitioned to non-immigrant visas, I interview people every day. I use interview skills. I speak to a lot of people. It's interesting. It's the quickest way to get to know a country is to talk to people every single day and find out about their lives and what they do. It's very interesting work. For example, I had an interesting case this morning, a suspected alien smuggler, someone who might be trafficking children to the United States. So every single day is different, and it is always interesting.
We're on mute. No,
Sorry, Jessica, we were on mute, so I'm sorry about that. If you could leave the mute controls off. So Jessica, the question I had for you was, what skill set did you bring from your previous experience into this new role that you think has been extremely beneficial to being a consular fellow?
I would say that, first of all, the most important thing is interpersonal skills. So you have to be able to work with other people. We're all on a team. We're serving our country abroad. It is stressful, as they discussed. So you need to be able to work with other people in a close and stressful environment. And like to work with other people, I would say, is the top skill I brought with me. Also, coming from a sales background, I had a lot of communication skills. I think that's also important, because we are conveying information to people about U.S. immigration laws and things that are really technical, but we're also representing our government abroad. So you have to be able to clearly communicate the mission and the goals and what we're doing. So interpersonal skills and communication.
Thank you, Jessica.
I see a question about opening and closing dates. For this particular program, it's always open. So you just go to careers.state.gov and you go ahead and sign up to do the test. Right now, it's a continuously open position. So there's not an opening and closing date like our other positions that we have.
All right, more questions. Keep them coming, and just type in your questions into the live chat.
So I see a good one from Sharon saying, I don't know if, oh shit, that's her. It's not a question.
Yeah. No worries.
I thought she was asking, but no, that's exactly what she said. You are completely treated like the rest of the embassy, and you do get pulled onto, you've got 4th of July events. You have other opportunities within the embassy, like in the econ section, the political section, that you can volunteer for. So it's like we were saying before, it's a great way for you guys to kind of figure out if this is right for you, and not only if this is right for you, if when you actually decide you want to become a generalist or a specialist, which one you want to be. We have the specialist positions where we have human resources, we have general service officers. So it's a good way in an embassy. It's like a compact little area where you can go to and see all these different positions we have in the State Department.
Right. And I see that this one is a new one from Christoph. How long is the fellowship? This is what you mentioned. It's like 5 years.
Yeah, you ever sign? It's like 4, but it can be no longer than 5 years.
Yeah, and I mean, just as long as people complete at least 1 year of their first rotation, it's fine. And depending on how long you last, there's different kind of like incentives that kind of go with it.
So you do training first, correct? And then you go into, so it's almost like Peace Corps service. You have that period when you're in training, and then you actually go into being a volunteer, in this case, into the fellows program. Is that right, Jessica?
Yes, it is. So I went through 3 months of training at the Foreign Service Institute in Washington, D.C. It started with an orientation program where I got to meet some great friends and colleagues that I think will be lifelong friends. After that, we do the basic consular course, which is a 5-week course that gets us prepared to do our jobs. It's full-time. It gives us the skills we need to do our jobs once we get overseas. And then there's a couple other training courses that we get to go through. But on average, it's about 3 months of training before we're sent to our first post. Now, I've been in Port of Spain for a year. I'm already bidding on my second tour to find out where I'll go a year from now. So the first tour, each tour is 2 years, and I believe there's an option to extend your second one for a few months because you can't go longer than 5 years.
Okay, so after you're cleared, this question comes from Kelly. How long does it take you to get your country placement?
Well, first you would need to get the invitation. So you would need to join the orientation class. So you get the invitation, you pack up everything you own, you move your family, your animals, whatever you have to Washington for orientation. And once you get there, I found out 2 weeks into my orientation class, it's not always that quickly, but it's pretty much right away you find out where you're going. We got the list of places that were available to choose from or to bid on within the first week. And then your first and second tours, the same as generalized, these are directed tours. So we get a list of places and cities and embassies and consulates worldwide that have openings for us. We rank them high, medium, and low, submit them, and then our career development officer chooses where we go. And they try to take into consideration our thoughts on each place. But like I said, I'm already bidding on my second tour, so I should know well in advance where I'm going next. I'll probably find out in the next 2 weeks.
Oh, wow. That sounds really exciting. So if you're strong in, I'm just curious, if you're strong in 2 different languages, one of the 5, I could technically work in a country where that language is spoken and then do a bid for another one if I test in both of those areas, or?
I'm not entirely sure about that, but in general we do that, but I'm not sure for this specific program. I think it's all language proficiency, focus.
Okay.
So it's like if you're Arabic, you're going to be Arabic. You're going to serve in these countries. If you're, you test for Mandarin, Chinese, you're Mandarin, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of the foreign, if you decide to come on to the foreign service as an officer or as a specialist or general service specialist, then that's when you have the worldwide availability. That's when, the bid list, for example, I bid every 2 to 3 years, and it's the same thing where you have a huge list, but it's not language specific. So there's, it's worldwide. But in that case, it's one of those things that I can test for you can use the language used for consular fellowship program, test for that language, and then you can go to more countries, basically.
Like that. So I see a question here from Alicia. She says, if I'm already working within the Department of State in passport services, what would be my first step should I want to work overseas?
I guess if it's specific to the consular fellowship program, it's going to be going on careers.state.gov and sign up for that exam.
Okay.
No matter what, that's the first step for everybody. It is a 5-year appointment, but you move every 2 years.
So the question was, for the viewers.
Sorry. I'm reading this.
Yeah, no worries. So the question says, I thought this Consular Fellows program was a 5-year appointment, not 2 years. And as Sarah just mentioned, it is.
It's just like when you're in the State Department, where every 2 or 3 years you bid on a different assignment, a different post.
So if you were late, I've noticed that there are a couple of people that are coming into the chat, or if you had difficulties, I just want to reiterate that this webinar will be available online again. You can check it out on our YouTube page at RPCV Careers. Also, other question as it relates to, yes. And again, if you have questions at any time, or you want to know where the links are, we're posting them in this live chat, or you can just email us at rvs at peacecorps.gov.
Mm-hmm. And all the information that, we've been talking about today, and more information than we can actually go into, is at careers.state.gov, and you go into, and that lists all of our careers, the various general specialists and civil servants, but then you can actually find the ones that are specific to the consular fellowship program.
So are these opportunities available too? Do you post on RPCV Career Link, or do they just need to go to state.gov?
The careers.state.gov is probably going to be the
Mhm.
best place right
Mhm.
now. I think it's a good note to maybe go ahead and share with the person who runs the program
Right.
to see if we could do that. But I mean, for right now, the majority of our information is on the careers.state.gov website.
How many applications do you receive?
It's a good question.
I'm not entirely sure. 'Cause,
Yeah, the
we're-
system just changed.
Yes.
In March.
Mhm.
So
we're starting to get people, and you look at it, it's 5 very tough languages.
Mm-hmm.
So it is, you're, instead of going through, the huge foreign service exam and then being put on a register with a bunch of other people, you're narrowed down in the fact that you speak one of these languages that we really want. These are hard to fill language assignments. So your little list and the applicants, is narrowed down significantly.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very good program if you speak one of those 5 languages.
So after 5 years, as a consular fellow, most people transition into what role? Do they stay with the state? It just runs the gamut.
It runs.
This runs.
It's been, the program's a newer program, so I would say it's, it's like any other thing where if you've done this job for 5 years and you're like, this is definitely what I want to do,
Yeah.
then people become the State Department. If you're like, oh, this is good, I did it for 5 years, I want to do something else.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of mixed, like, any other job.
right, and again, you're able to go ahead and take the exam while you're actually in it. So it's one of those things that you're able to go ahead and prep for it.
Mhm.
And so if you decide to go ahead and say, yes, this is my life, this is what I want to do, go ahead and take the Foreign Service Officer exam, and then you go ahead and switch off, which is technically what we've seen happen. Number wise, again, I can't really give you numbers, unfortunately, I don't have that, but I think a lot of people do transition into that, and or again, if they have an interest in becoming civil service and or something else, again, you're meeting the people, you're networking with the people, you're working side by side. So, hopefully that will help create something for you and forge your path.
I think someone asked for the languages again, so it's Arabic, Mandarin, Portuguese, Russian, Spanish.
So are there any programs or tools that you suggest someone for strengthening their language skills? Something that they can access?
Yeah, I mean, unofficially, officially, I mean, I think it's languages, right? Like you
Yes.
have to
What
be
do
able to
you
practice
do?
it,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So I think the first and foremost, if you have like a friend or like a study group or something where you go ahead and practice that particular language, I think that would be really helpful. And just having the practice, and just being able to read in that particular language is going to be nice. And writing is going to be another useful tool. I think in reality, people look more so towards the speaking and potentially the reading. But I think just as long as you're able to go ahead and kind of use it day to day, I think that's going to be more helpful.
And you need to strengthen it however you strengthen your language in general. There's nothing specific that would help you out more versus being able to speak the language. So you need to figure out whichever way you normally strengthen your language, whether it's like you said, talking to other people while doing one of the Rosetta Stone programs or various language programs.
Right.
Whichever way you can best strengthen your language ability so that you are proficient, so that when you test for this, you will be accepted into the program.
Okay. I see a question here from Elena, and she's just curious to know what are the possibilities of being posted in the country where you served in if you were a Peace Corps volunteer?
In
Does that matter? Yeah.
No, it's not gonna, meaning if you served, in the Peace Corps before in this country, it's not gonna matter. They won't not put you there. They won't specifically put you there. The only advantage is if you have a language. And then, it's one of those things that once you fill out your security clearance anyway, they have everywhere you've been. So it's not that you could not serve where you've been, and it's not that you will absolutely serve where you've been.
Okay. Thank you.
That
So
makes sense.
yeah, makes perfect sense. Again, questions about the application and where to go, we're going to put that in the live chat. So if you haven't seen that, again, you can email us at rvs@peacecorps.gov or visit careers.state.gov. All right, so we have a couple more minutes left with our panelists, so go ahead and get your questions in. Anything that's pressing that you really want our wonderful guests to answer, feel free to ask now. It seems this one comes from Matilda, excuse me if I mispronounced your name. She says, I will be taking the OA in July. I passed the foreign service test 3 times. Foreign Service Officer Test 3 times, is a multiple choice of the Consular Fellows OA, similar to the multiple choice of the FWIS.
Can actually talk about, there's like a certain amount of the test itself, especially since you've taken the test, that we can't divulge because, you know, we can't give anybody an unfair advantage. So we can give you the general structure, but when you come to like questions, multiple choice versus whatever, you know, we can't kind of go into that because we don't give anybody an unfair advantage of another person coming in.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
No, definitely. No worries. You said you could give the general structure.
Yes.
What is
Is this for the orals?
Yes.
So the orals in general, you're going to be basically put in situations or talking about situations and seeing how you're going to react, like hypotheticals.
Okay.
And I
Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to give a few tips that one, how I studied for the exam and for the oral, is to just know yourself really well. Study, read up on what's going on current policy and historical facts, but really know yourself, be prepared to talk about yourself and communicate it clearly, and I think you'll do great.
Thank you, Jessica. Yeah, that was great feedback. Appreciate that. You want to take that one?
Actually, do not know. I mean, I know there's a question about if this is the counselor fellowship program is going to become a career option within the Foreign Service versus being a program right now. Not entirely sure about that. That does happen sometimes, or we started with the program becomes a career, but right now I have no idea. And those executive orders also take a while, so we might not know for a while either.
All right. So in closing, because we're getting ready to wrap up here, is there anything else that you just want to add and that you want to give some advice to our PCVs that are viewing online or will watch later that will be helpful, and things that they should just know about the program?
Well, in general, you guys are all in the Peace Corps, or you've been in the Peace Corps, so you enjoy traveling at least. This is an amazing way to do it within the State Department and the things that we do. It's truly an amazing experience, and the Consular Fellowship Program is a very good way to figure out if it is what you want to do. And it's the most rewarding thing. And again, I had no idea this was what I wanted to do. I was like, I'm going to do it for one tour, 2 days. The Foreign Service is what I'm talking about. And I've been in it 10 years. So the Consular Fellowship Program is a good way to figure out if this is what you want to do. And you're going to be experiencing everything an officer would be experiencing. So it's not like you're going to be, you get a full taste of what it's like to work in an embassy, to be a diplomat.
Yeah, and I would just say, as Jessica was talking about really knowing yourself, I think that's something that's really important. I talk about the 12 dimensions, and I really do think those are kind of some of the ways that people kind of gauge who you are. So what I would encourage you all to do is look up the 12 dimensions. Again, that's on careers.state.gov, and or if you just want to Google it. But you're able to go ahead and just make kind of like flashcards. Like, when did you exhibit composure? Go ahead and write down your scenario. Go ahead and, go through each one, get yourself a little flashcard, and just kind of like get to know like a particular scenario. So you kind of have your elevator speech ready if you need it. But obviously, the more that you're able to kind of like self-reflect, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah. And relax. Like, it sounds horrible and it sounds counterintuitive, but relax. Like, don't stress about it. The more you stress, the more it's going to make the whole process, especially the orals, more difficult.
And Judy just mentioned elevator pitch, and that rings the bell with our PCV careers. Again, our services are here to help you. So go ahead and book an appointment and contact our career development specialist if you need any help as far as your resume, mock interviews, setting that elevator pitch. We have those resources available, and we want you guys to utilize them. And Jessica, I'm just going to let you close. Do you have anything else that you just want to add?
I just wanted to add that being a part of the Consular Fellows has been an incredibly rewarding experience. It's interesting to be here to see how the inside of an embassy works, how other agencies work abroad besides State Department. It has given me an invaluable experience to use no matter what I choose to do later in life. And I think that if you already live abroad and you find that you enjoy it, that this would be a perfect fit for you. So maybe I'll hope to see you soon in the field.
Thank you so much, Jessica, and thank you to all of my panelists, our panelists that joined us today. Sharon, I know that you weren't able to join us vocally, but we appreciate you being in the chat and chatting with our guests online. We really do appreciate it. And so we will see you next time for our next Employer Spotlight. Hope you all have a wonderful day.